Have you ever wondered what games you should keep or you should lose? Find out here at Purge Reviews. Have you ever wondered what games you should sell or you should use? Find out here at Purge Reviews. Find out on our top 10 list what games you cannot miss. Don't forget to subscribe to Purge Reviews.
So here's a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game by IDW. It's called Showdown. You're going to see Bebop and Rocksteady with the Ninja Turtles on the cover. Let's take a look at what's inside. I do have to say the cover is very action-oriented, and so will the game. You're going to have a pretty good instruction manual here. It's really big, gives you an outline of what components come in it. It's got the setup on 2 pages, and it kind of goes through the rules. The rules are pretty simple. I really like the rules actually quite a bit. An icon chart on the back. The board's a little generic. It's kind of a hex kind of thing going on here. You have some pizza mark and some stuff, but it is rather generic, but they do the best they can. Here's some of the components. You're going to get cards for all the characters. These are extremely thin and cheap. They feel like business cards almost. These standees, which are clear and about as cheap as you can get, they do have nice pictures on them. You have one for each of the Turtles. You got Bebop, Rocksteady, Splinter, Casey Jones, Angel, and April O'Neil. You're going to have a couple trackers for each of the teams. You're going to have some miscellaneous little tiles. These are all very cheap and thin. And you're going to have these that you're going to be putting out. This almost reminds me of like a kid's game from the 90s. These are very, very cheap. The components are really not good at all, to be honest. Huge missing point here, but I have a feeling that this may have been a just dump on the market. Not a lot of publicity before it came out, but the components are not good at all. So the first thing you do is choose who's going to be the bad guys and who's going to be the good guys. The only bad guys in this set are going to be Rocksteady and Bebop. No Shredder or Krang or anybody else, Baxter. And then the good guys will play as the Turtles. And if you're playing 2 players, maybe all 4 Turtles, and otherwise you just kind of break these up into different pairings based on the number of players. Each player's going to have 2 cards. You're going to choose which one you want, and you have an exhausted side and an unexhausted side. You choose your people, you set them up. The game actually doesn't tell you who goes first, so I assume you just randomize it. Well, in this case, we'll do the Turtles first. And what you're going to do on these cards, let's say we're going to have Leonardo go first. You will see his attack, his defense, how many tiles he places, and his movement, and you'll each have a power. So depending on which one I'd use, his power will be a little different. Let's go with the leadership card here. Move any other turtle to an adjacent connected tile or through pipes. The target turtle can be anywhere on the game board. The only real requirement you have on a turn is that your character must move at least 1 tile. They can come back where they started, but they have to get through it. So the way the game will end is you will be putting these map tiles out on the board. If the entire board is ever full, then you will go to your Showdown track, and whoever's the furthest on the Showdown track will win. And you will move up on this every time that you win a battle. Now the Turtles can also win because as they're moving around, they will take their allies with them and they will bring them back to their home. If they ever end up with 3 allies back at their home, then they win. You also win the game if you ever get to the end of your track. So if you're able to get all the way to 10 on the Showdown track, then you'll win, whether it's the good guys or the bad guys. So to illustrate the game, I'm going to do Michelangelo first. 2 attack, 3 defense, 1 tile, and he can move a number of 3. Once per turn, he can place a nunchucks token, great side face up on any pipe or your tile or an adjacent tile. So Michelangelo is going to place a tile out on the board. He can place it adjacent to his location. So I will just draw one of these tiles, and I will put this out on the board adjacent to his location. And now Michelangelo can move up to 3 spots. So I'm going to go ahead and move him 1, 2. There's 9 squares on these little squares right here. So that will be his turn. Now, if you had any of these pizzas, you can always give up a pizza to take an entire another turn. That would be the cost. So you'd give up one of these pizzas, and then you would take another turn right after that. So let's say Rocksteady was going to go next. He would place 2 tiles, because there's nowhere for him to move yet. So I can place this adjacent to him, like here. And maybe I want to place this one here adjacent. So now he can get, because he can move 1 space, he can move here to get closer to the turtles. So on your turn, and then after you play the card, you flip it over to show that it's exhausted. You have your stats here, and this means he can't be played again. So on the next time, I would have to use my Bebop card, and when they're both flipped over, then I can flip them over. The same thing with me moving Michelangelo. He's on his exhausted side. I can't utilize him again until all three of the other turtles have moved. As this is a skirmish game, if you're ever in the same spot, you can fight with somebody. So let me show you how those work. Now, Bebop and Rocksteady are probably more powerful than the turtles. The turtles do have a benefit to working together. So what you would do on this turn is you each would roll a 6-sided dice. We'll say green is for the turtles and purple is for Rocksteady. So I would take his attack. Let's say Rocksteady is attacking. I would add that to his attack. That would be 11. To his defense of 2 plus 5 is 7. If the attacker is greater than the defense, the defending player, if he had any allies, they would go back, or they would stay where they're at, and then the turtle would have to go back to his home area. So in this case, Raphael would have to go back to his home area. Rocksteady would get to move his showdown track up 1. If the defender had won, nothing would happen. He would not move up the track, and everybody would stay where they are at. If there's a tie, then you just do a simple re-roll. As a quick overview, what the turtles are trying to do is move around and get these tunnels out so they can get over here and save the allies. They can win really quickly by having those 3 allies. Bebop and Rocksteady more want to fight, and they want to beat the turtles in fights, because if they can win 10 of those fights, they're going to win the game, or have the most when all of the map tiles are out. So Bebop and Rocksteady are really more powerful than the turtles unless the turtles get together. They can add up their attacks, and that's a very powerful way for them to do that. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Showdown was a game I was a little bit excited about when I saw it. I hadn't heard anything about it. I was a little weary that it might be Shadows of the Past condensed down into a box or a smaller version of that, since I already had the Kickstarter version. I was hoping I wasn't buying the same game. Well, I did sort of, but this is a this is not compared to Shadows of the Past at all. Shadows of the Past is actually a really neat little miniatures game with a neat mechanic with the dice, and I can share them. This is not that. This has some of the worst components that I've ever seen. This is mass market type cheap components. The tiles are for like cheaper than business cards. The cards are, very easy to crumble in your hands. You don't get any miniatures. The standees are like these clear painted on things. They're always falling over. The tiles and tokens are cheap. The components are just terrible, but it does have a good license on it. So you might overlook some of that if the gameplay is there. Well, let me tell you that it's not. This is not a game adults will sit down and play. It's really just a cat and mouse game with the turtles running around trying to get allies and Bebop and Rocksteady trying to catch them. This game screams for expansions and having more people, but the allies don't do anything. You have to go save Casey Jones, and he does nothing in the fight. So does Splinter. Very weird. The turtles are weaker, which is kind of a strategy. You want to keep them together, but you also want to pass off the allies. So it's a hit and miss there strategy-wise. But Bebop and Rocksteady are so much more powerful that the turtles have to kind of gang up to beat them. Very thematic. That works really well. The problem is that really each character is going to have a strength score, an attack score, and you roll a single 6-sided die to add to that. So it's not very compelling. There's not any cards you can play to mitigate that or help. It's really just a roll of the die with your attack scores. And you got to have multiple turtles there if you're going to fight Bebop and Rocksteady. You're never going to want to fight them on your own. Each character has 2 cards, so every time you play, you can probably pick something a little bit different that has a little bit of power. There's a little bit of strategy, I guess, to moving around. On the strategy, you're pulling over a tile and you're playing it. It has to be adjacent to you. So if you don't get the right piece, you kind of get stuck anyway. There is not a lot here. Now, if this was intended to be a children's game, I think they hit their mark. Now, there's pluses and minuses to that. I think the simplistic gameplay is really good. My son is really going to like this game. I'm eager to play it with him. I think he's going to have a lot of fun with it. And the math is going to be easy enough for him. You're going to add the strength score with what you roll. It's going to be a lot of good practicing with math for him. The problem is the components. Not coming back to that. I don't know if this game will hold up if you just give this to a kid to play. It's going to be like one of those mass market games where it's just destroyed after a few plays. It'll hold up a little bit longer if you keep it and you play it with your children, with an adult there to supervise, make sure they're putting it up and taking care of it. But I don't see this game lasting over maybe 1 to 3 plays with a bunch of kids trying to play it. And I'm not sure that playing with multiple people over 2 is really that helpful, as you're just splitting up the turtles at that point. Well, maybe that's fun. And whoever's playing the bad guys, maybe an adult, because the components are so cheap, it'll work out better. For adults, this is an absolute purge and an absolute stinker. There's so many good fighting games and combat and skirmish games on the market. This is not it, even if you're looking for something simplistic. For children, though, I think the theme's going to come alive. I think they're like the Ninja Turtles. The math is easy. And for the younger kids, maybe who are trying to practice their math or really like the Ninja Turtles, this is going to be a hit. It's a step up above a mass market game. There's no spinning. There's no rolling dice for movement, although there is rolling dice for attack. And it does have that thing where the turtles are better together than by themselves. So there's a little bit of strategy to it for younger ones, but for gamers, there's not going to be any strategy at all. I hope this has been helpful. So for adults, Purge. For kids that like Ninja Turtles, I think it's a keeper. Thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate you tuning in. If you liked it, please like it and hit that little subscribe button. That really helps out the channel, lets us know that you're getting the videos that you want. If you agreed or disagree with what I said, feel free to comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I promise that I will comment back. Thanks for watching, and everybody else, keep playing games.